Good afternoon, everybody. Sheriff Balaam here, and thank you for joining us for another series of Did You Know? Before I get started and introduce my guest today, I'm excited to talk about our topic. Remember, if you have questions about our topic today, which hopefully, if you're into science, you should, or any portions of science or crime scene stuff, please send those questions in. If it's questions about other topics, please, from previous Did You Know series, or anything you want to ask the Sheriff's Office, send those in. We will get to them. We will answer them. And always, please turn on your notifications so you can stay connected to the Washington County Sheriff's Office. So today, did you know I have two guests? I have Laura and I have Anastasia from my Forensic Science Division. And next week, starting Sunday, is Forensic Science Week. And we're going to talk about our Forensic Science Division. Some of you may know it as the Crime Lab. We refer to it as the Forensic Science Division. I know when we start talking about that, many people, if they've watched TV, start thinking about all the crime series, CSI, and all of that. But these are two individuals we're going to talk that actually work in a Forensic Science Division. And yes, like TV, we do a lot of amazing work, but a little different than TV. We may not solve a crime in 45 minutes. It takes a little bit longer. Right, ladies?
Absolutely.
So with that, let's just jump right in. Anastasia, what is a forensic scientist and what do you do?
So, a forensic scientist is just a scientist who has an educational background in a natural or physical science. And then, as part of their job, they will either collect evidence, perform scientific examinations, and testify to the results of those examinations in a court of law. At the lab here, we actually have several different sections that we actually focus on. So, we have biology, which is DNA type testing or looking for body fluids and things like that. We have breath alcohol instrument calibration, where we calibrate instruments used for testing breath for DUIs. We have controlled substance analysis, where we test solid drugs for the presence, for whether or not they actually are drugs or baking soda. We do crime scene analysis, where we go to the crime scenes, we figure out which evidence we need to collect and bring back to the lab for testing. We do latent print analysis, in which we will either try and look and see if we can find prints on surfaces, as well as try and compare those prints to other prints to find out who may have possibly left that print. And then we also do toxicology, which is testing of blood or urine for the presence of drugs or alcohol.
And firearms, right? Because aren't we the state database for entering firearms, correct?
Correct. I missed firearms.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, it's a team effort here. And so with all of that, for those out there that may be in school, that may be interested, there's a lot of science. Mm-hmm. So for those of you out there that are interested, that love science, biology, chemistry, I encourage you, right, to look into that. Stay tuned. And when you come out of college, look at the Washington County Sheriff's Office for a possible career or other forensic science divisions. So with that, Laura, question. What types of evidence do you look at and examine?
Yeah, so we look at all sorts of types of evidence, from blood and urine for DUI cases, crystalline substances, powders, plant material for drug analysis. We look for latent impressions like fingerprints, handprints, footprints on a gauntlet of different types of items. Firearms, of course, looks at firearms as well as bullets or cartridge cases, and can also look at weapons like knives or tools. And then DNA, which is the section that I'm in, can pretty much get DNA off of everything. But the most common things that we're looking at are sexual assault kits, clothing, bedding, tools, weapons, swabs from crime scenes. Pretty much anything you can think of, we can attempt to get DNA off of it.
And DNA, I mean, every section is advancing, but DNA probably, that's one that's had a lot of advances in the last decade or even sooner, right?
Yes, a lot.
And it's amazing some of the stuff we do. And when you're looking at, what was it? Firearms. I know when we talk to some people, they don't realize, kind of like latent prints, they leave their own marks, both on the bullet and the cartridge from the firearm, correct?
That's right.
So awesome. So, Anastasia, what other agencies besides the Washoe County Sheriff's Office do we provide services for?
So our lab here actually functions almost as a regional lab. So we actually help agencies across northern and central Nevada. So we have over 80 different agencies who will submit evidence to us, and that is local, state, federal, tribal, pretty much a rather large spectrum of the area. Also, as part of all of this, we participate in several national databases. So we are part of the CODIS database, which is a DNA database. We are part of the APHIS database, which is a latent print database. And we're part of the NIBIN database, which is a firearms database. Through all of those, we may be the source of investigative leads for agencies across the U.S., and they also may be the source of investigative leads back to us.
And the one thing that's, I think, a huge accomplishment for this lab is like the CODIS. Again, like NIBINs, right? We enter everything for the state here, but same for CODIS. All our convicted offenders and their DNA come to our lab. We enter them so then we can share that with the national databases and hopefully get leads on stuff. And I know over the last, several years, the lab is really focused on catching up on our backlog for DNA, right? Mm-hmm. And through CODIS, through DNA, we have often gotten a lot of hits from not just maybe the case that was submitted on, but multiple cases that are sometimes a couple of years old.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's neat. So, Laura, what types of cases do you work on? You kind of already touched on it, but go a little more in depth.
So we work all types of criminal cases, from misdemeanors such as DUIs to burglaries, robberies, kidnappings, aggravated assaults, sexual assaults, all the way up to homicides. Pretty much any type of criminal act we can investigate. And then, like you just said, we do all of the database processing for CODIS. So any individual who's been arrested for a felony or convicted of a felony gets entered into CODIS, the national database. And we test all of those samples for Central and Northern Nevada. So that keeps us quite busy as well.
And I think it was a couple of years ago, you'll be able to tell me the official name. I just call it the big machine. But, you guys can take those large plates of DNA samples, right, and put them in where before it was one at a time, very tedious.
Yeah.
But now, how many can you process at one time?
We can process up to, I think, 84 with controls and everything in place, but that allows us to process our offender samples much quicker than in the past.
Which is amazing. And I know I just like going to look at the machines and watch them work, and it's really neat. So, Anastasia, how many cases a year do you work in your section?
So actually, in the whole lab, we test 1,500 cases a year. Now, that doesn't count the toxicology section, because the way toxicology works, everything is batched. It's one sample per case, and it can go a lot faster. The toxicology section in itself has actually received 2,500 cases in a year. So they get a much faster throughput than the rest of the sections of the lab. But between all of them, we've helped up quite a few cases.
So you have a very large workload, both of you in both your sections. And again, I know oftentimes we hear this, we see it on our side. You guys see it when you go to court, that everybody watches the crime shows, right? So again, they think we can solve them. And sometimes we do. But when you involve the lab, it's tedious 45 minutes, although we have some technology that's coming forward that's really slowing or speeding up those times, correct? And so it's amazing. And so I'd love to ask both of you, what's your favorite part of the job, Laura?
Oh, my favorite part, obviously, we're helping the community, right? We're solving crime. So it feels very rewarding to work in an environment like this where we feel like we're giving back to the community. I just think it's really rewarding.
And how about for you, Anastasia? What do you like?
So technically, it's 2 bits for me. So I am a chemist who loves chemistry. So you put me in a lab and you let me do chemistry, I get excited. So I like the fact that I'm doing chemistry and I'm helping the community, as well as the fact that I get to work with a great bunch of people. I love everyone down in the lab, and I am just so glad that I get to work with them every day.
That's awesome. And so with that, again, I kind of touched on, but you guys are going to be able to share a lot more, especially I think for those that are super interested in whether it's forensic science, again, chemistry, but firearms isn't chemistry, but there's a lot more examinations there and that technical skills. But what are some new projects that the Forensic Science Lab is working on? Anastasia.
So one of the things that we're getting down in the lab is we've just received a new scan station. So we did a whole bunch of media a couple years ago about the scan station that would enable us to do 3D diagrams of a crime scene. And it was a great instrument. However, it's in comparison to what we just got, we got a brand new one that will scan faster, have more details, enable us to make those diagrams even faster so we can help provide them more often for more cases.
So like this room here, you could bring it in and quickly it would scan everything, the tiers, the chairs, the tables, everything.
It will even measure how far apart everything is, enables you to have perfect, precise distances of all of those items.
Well, I'm excited to see some of that because I saw the old one, which was amazing, and this one I haven't seen the new work. And so, Laura, what about in your area?
We've got a lot of new stuff coming on board. We've got 2 gigantic new robots there to help with the actual lab DNA processing. We're in the midst of validating those, and those are just to help get us that higher throughput, kind of like Stacy says they have for tox. We'll be able to process 96 well plates at a time through extraction and our full AMP CE process. So those are in the midst of being validated. We also are in the midst of validating a new software program called StarMix. And StarMix is used nationwide these days. It's a probabilistic genotyping software, which helps us not only interpret samples, so it helps analysts with interpretation, but it also performs the statistics for us. So if we have a match between an evidentiary item and a reference sample, it will provide a statistical weight for that match. So we're really looking forward as analysts to getting that up and running because it's going to put a lot more consistency into our interpretation and help us with that statistical analysis part. We also have some exciting new things. As you know, we do have the rapid DNA up and running for our CODIS side of the house. So that's where we currently use it. But we're also in the process of validating something called Small Pond, which is a software that we're going to use to house a local database for our local state offenders. And it's our goal to, and we're in the midst of this validation as well, to validate crime scene samples where we have excess DNA, like high quality blood samples, where we can take a portion of that sample, run it in 90 minutes on the rapid DNA, and then put it into this local database and help give investigative information to detectives in 2 hours.
Which, again, I know I believe we did a story on the rapid DNA, and again, you hit on it 90 minutes, and you hit a couple times, and I'm always amazed, especially when we get those much larger machines that are more efficient. But validation, how long does it take to validate one of those machines?
So it depends on, it seems like everything's different. These ones they actually took several months in the lab to validate. But after looking at the data, crunching all the numbers, we've kind of seen some issues where they're not performing exactly as we expected. So we've got to go back into the lab and make them work exactly how we want. So sometimes it can be fairly quick, depends on the depth of what we're validating, and sometimes it can take a long time, unfortunately.
Oh. And so with that, is there anything interesting coming up? And I kind of touched on, so I took a little bit of your thunder. I apologize. That interesting about the lab here coming up.
Yeah, so next week, like Sheriff Balaam said, is National Forensic Science Week. It's the 18th through the 24th. We're really focusing this year on letting our support staff and our criminalists know how much we appreciate the work that they do on a daily basis. So we are putting out little treats each day to each of our employees, and we're having a big barbecue on Wednesday to celebrate them. And we also like to give to the community as well and have some community engagement during National Science Week. So we are going out and we're actually doing a presentation about forensic science to Hug High School students. So we'll be at the new high school giving them a little lecture about forensic science.
Awesome. And Anastasia, I believe I always call it internship, but it wasn't. It was an externship, right, that we had?
Mm-hmm.
What was that about?
So we've had several externships in which externships are essentially someone who already has a professional degree who is coming and trying to learn more information. So we have been partnered with some educational organizations in which they are sending us teachers who teach forensic science courses to spend 3 or 4 days in the lab actually seeing a professional doing that casework to enable them to be able to provide better information to their students as well as better examples of how this world really works.
And I know the first one was the summer. And was it a teacher from Hub? Do you guys remember?
Kim.
I believe so, right?
Yes. Kim was the most recent one.
And, the feedback I got was she absolutely loved it. And I know again, every time we send somebody down. And oftentimes we don't open the lab because, unlike the jail where we can have tours all the time, right? There's a lot of evidence out, and there's a lot of restrictions. Because I always get asked that, and I'm sure you guys do, of why can't we go tour the lab? And so I know that's something we always try to work on, once a year, because you guys have to kind of shut your sections down if we want to open it up because of those requirements, because we don't want evidence tainted, correct?
Well, as well as the fact we have to worry about contamination. So whenever we did an open house or anything like that, we would have to shut down for a day, clean the entire lab to make sure there was no biohazards or anything that was dangerous to anyone out and about, allow the people to come through, and then have to clean the day after as well, because we don't want any of your DNA to be available to show up on evidence or anything like that. So we very much have to do a lot of cleaning whenever we have the public in our area.
A lot of work on top of a lot of work you guys do. So I have one last question, again, because I know hopefully there's a lot of our viewers out there that are interested, whether they're just getting out of high school or entering high school or in college or out of college. But what would you, I'm going to start with you, Anastasia. What would you recommend for someone who's interested in a career in forensic science?
So the minimum to get a career in pretty much anywhere in forensic science is you need to have a bachelor's degree in a natural and physical science. One of the things we have been seeing is there are a lot of colleges now that have forensic science degrees. If that degree doesn't have a bunch of science classes, you're probably not in the right degree program, because we have found people who had forensic science degrees and took only 8 credits of science. That is definitely not enough. Now, at the same time, if you want to get an advanced degree, that is also something that makes you someone who is more likely to get hired. You obviously can be hired with a bachelor's, but if 80% have bachelor's and 20% have a master's or a PhD, we're probably going to hire a master's or a PhD, so that can help you. But again, there's a lot of online courses out there that are not very science-based. You have to be very careful.
So key is science classes.
Absolutely.
Chemistry, bio, those fun classes.
Well, those are the best classes.
I know you I struggle a little bit in chemistry. Biology I liked, but chemistry, And Laura, how about you? What would you tell somebody about forensic science and what they should do?
Yeah, so for biology specific, we follow not only the general accreditation standards that a forensic science lab follows, but we also have to follow the FBI quality assurance standards that allows us to enter DNA profiles into the national database. And they set forth even more rigorous school requirements. So on top of that hard science degree, you also have to have specifically a course in genetics, molecular biology, biochemistry, and statistics or population genetics. And that is very specific to bio and biology. So if you want to work with DNA, you have to have those 4 classes.
And that's pretty much, for both of you, that's pretty much at any crime lab across the nation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And again, I want to do a little bragging because you guys do all that work. We are one of the nationally accredited labs in the nation, correct?
Absolutely. We have been accredited, I believe, since 2090. 2000.
2000.
I'm doing good.
2090. Hey, I got a little old here real quick.
I'm sorry. Since I believe 1993.
Awesome. And, I just want to say thank you to both you and all of your teams. You guys do a great work. I'm looking forward to the barbecue because besides all your phenomenal work here, you always have some great food. So I'll starve myself the day before so I can be there and enjoy the good work. For everybody out there, again, thank you for joining us on another series of Did You Know? If you have questions, hopefully, if there are science questions, I have the 2 perfect people and many more. We can answer them, so please send them in. If you missed it or you just didn't get to it, send them in. We'll answer them. If you're interested in forensic science, call. We can get you with anybody down there, with Laura or Anastasia. They can answer your questions. We have plenty of staff. I encourage you to seek out. I know it's a great career. Talking to you guys when you're down there, you guys love it. You get to see a lot of neat things and solve some really great crimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for everybody out there, I want to say thank you for joining us. Again, send your questions, turn on your notifications so you can stay connected. And hopefully for all of you that are here in Washoe County, you're staying inside and staying out of the smoke. And let's keep our fingers crossed that hopefully dissipates here soon. And until we see you again, have a great day. Thank you.